Hey folks, so this week is a fun recipe that we're going to do. It's a pizza dough, BIGA pizza dough, B-I-G-A. And it's just a type of pre-fermentation dough that's very popular in Italy along with Polish. Both are methods that have been used for hundreds of years in the bread making and pizza making world. It produces a very light, airy texture to the crust. It also makes it very easily digestible. So when you eat pizza, this like a BIGA or a Polish type pizza, you don't have that heavy feeling in your stomach like you would with other pizzas. You can make it as thin or as thick as you like, just like any other dough. But it, like I said, produces some of the best pizza dough that you'll ever have. It does require a little bit of pre-planning, so you make that initial part of the dough, which takes about 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes at the most. And then you set it in your refrigerator for up to 48 hours. And then on the day you're going to have pizza, you take it out and you make the dough balls and make your pizza. The other thing, it is nice if you have a stand mixer. It's not required, but a stand mixer sure will make it a lot easier as opposed to kneading it by hand. So I hope you will try it at least, and if you do, I'm confident you'll find that it's probably some of the best pizza you've ever had. I have friends and family who ask me to make the pizza dough for them, because you can freeze it. Once you've made the dough balls, you can't freeze it. And so I make a lot of dough balls for people all the time. And they tell me it's the best pizza they've ever had. So with that, I hope you give it a try, and we'll see you next when we look at the ingredients. Okay, in order to get started on this BIGA, you're going to need some sort of a vessel to mix the dough in initially. And just any high-sided container that you can shake the dough once you put the water in will work. Okay. So first I've got 690 grams of pizza flour. It's a double O flour. I use Caputo. I'll have a picture of that in just a minute to show you what it looks like. I get that on Amazon, although Publix has started to carry it. The next thing you're going to need is 6.9 grams of instant yeast. Okay, and you can just sprinkle that across the flour here. All right, and with the spoon, just kind of give it a little mix. All right, and the next thing you need is 345 milliliters of water. And to that, I'm also going to add 5 grams, roughly, of honey. Now the honey is important because it will give the pizza dough a good color. And since this is something that we're doing in a conventional oven and not a 900-degree pizza oven, it is important that at this phase that you have some of the honey in the water. All right, now all we're going to do is we're going to take the water and slowly drizzle it over the flour a little bit at a time. And then once you got a little bit in there, just kind of give it a shake. Okay, add some more. And you're going to give it a shake. Add a little more. Okay, that's all of it. Give it a shake. You want to do this several minutes. And if you have a bench scraper, kind of clean up the sides. All right, so once you've got the sides cleaned up, what you're looking for is the consistency is to have these little pieces of dough that are very soft. All right. And so what you're going to do with this is transfer it to a container similar to this, with some plastic foil or plastic wrap on the top, and you're going to let it sit at room temperature for about 2 hours. And after that 2 hours, you're going to then transfer it into the refrigerator, where it's going to stay for the next 48 hours, up to 48 hours. As far as the type of flour that I recommend, this is what I get on Amazon. It's from a company called Caputo, and it's a double O pizzeria flour. And you can get it on Amazon in smaller packs. It's relatively inexpensive, but it's just a super dough for making pizza. Actually, I use it a lot in my sourdough bread as well. So it's a great dough. I do know that Publix is now carrying a double O flour by King Arthur. I haven't tried it. I'm sure it's fine, but you can't go wrong with this Caputo blue flour. Okay, so we're back after 2 days of allowing the dough that we made to just rest in the refrigerator. And you can see with clean hands, what you have is it has kind of absorbed all that moisture. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move this into our stand mixer and just kind of breaking it up into slightly smaller pieces. Okay, so we're going to move this over. And as I said, just kind of breaking it up a little bit into slightly smaller pieces. Okay, so now that we have the dough transferred over into the stand mixer bowl, now what we're going to add to that is 115 milliliters of cold water, and it needs to be really cold water. Okay, then we're going to put the dough hook on it. And we also have 17 grams of kosher salt and 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil that we will add later once we get the water starting to get mixed into the dough. So what we're going to do is obviously start this out on a low setting. Okay, and we're going to let that mix for just a minute or two until you start to see it kind of get a little milky. And at that point, we'll be able to add some of the salt and the oil. Okay, so it's been about 2 minutes. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to add just some of the salt. Turn the mixer back on. All right, and now we can add the rest of the salt. The goal here is to just try and get it evenly distributed. Okay. And the other thing I'm going to do is add the tablespoon of olive oil.
Now the olive oil is also important, again, because we're cooking in a relatively lower temperature setting, being a home oven, where your max temperature is either going to be 5 or 550. And so the olive oil will help the crust develop a little bit of a brown color. It will help to cook it better. Okay, so now that we've got the oil mixed in along with the salt, now I'm going to turn it up, and I'm going to mix it at a either the next to high or a highest setting until the dough starts to form a solid dough ball and starts to pull away. And at that point, I'm going to turn it down to where the stand mixer can relatively, handle it without wanting to tip over. So you got to stick around and watch your stand mixer when you're doing this, because once the dough forms, it's going to want to throw the stand mixer around. So we'll be back. I'm going to set this on high, and we'll be back in probably just a couple minutes. Okay, so you can see at this point that it's going to pull away, and it's going to essentially dry the edges of the bowl out. And at this point, once it does that, we're going to turn it down. Okay, so you can see it's now formed somewhat of a dough, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn this on to a medium setting, and we're going to let that go for about 10 to 12 minutes. And that's important because that's where you're really going to be developing the gluten here, okay? So let's go about 10 to 12 minutes on that setting right there. Okay, so this has been mixing right at about 12 minutes, and I think it's going to be suitable. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the machine off, and we're going to transfer the dough to a clean work surface. And to do that, you want to make sure that you put a little bit of olive oil on your hands so that the dough doesn't stick to you, because it will be a little bit sticky. So we'll do that now. Okay, so I'm just going to put just a little bit of olive oil on my hands. I'm going to remove this dough hook, and I'm going to take the dough out, and actually going to put just a little bit of oil on the counter as well. Okay. So now, want to get under it and do what's called the slap and fold, right? So you pick it up and fold it over itself. Okay. We're going to do that several times, but you can see this dough has really a great gluten development. You can see it will stretch very nicely for you, and it is just an incredible tasting dough. And again, if you don't have a stand mixer, you could have done this process by hand, but it's going to involve basically doing this and kneading for 15 to 20 minutes to get it to this. That's why the stand mixer is so much more helpful. So now what we're going to do is just put a couple drops of oil in a bowl and just kind of cover the sides there a little bit. Again, a couple more of these little stretch and folds. Okay, and now I'm just pushing under and kind of rotating, and what you're trying to do is develop a little bit of surface tension on top of the dough here. Okay, so we've got a nice dough ball, and I'm just going to place it in the container. I'm going to put a cover on it, and we're going to let that sit for 1 hour. and we'll be back. Okay, so it has been about an hour, and the dough has had a chance to rest and proof a little bit. And again, as you remember, we put it into an oiled dish. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to transfer it back to a work surface, and we're going to ball it up again, and then I'm going to divide it into 3 dough balls. 2 regular size dough balls and 1 smaller one. It's just how it works out. You could make 2 bigger ones. You could make 3 even sized. It's something you can experiment with. But so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of moisten the work surface a little bit. This helps the dough in terms of sticking. And what I'm trying to do is to get it turned out, and again with wet fingers, going to do a couple more of those stretch and folds. Okay, and as you can see, this is just such a beautiful dough. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to kind of cut this into 3 pieces. I'm going to have a small dough ball, and again, all I do with these is little miniature stretch and folds, and you just tuck the dough up under and make a little dough ball. And I oiled 3 dishes or 3 bowls. I'm going to put the small one in there, and here I can cut this into 2. And again, if it gets too sticky, just moisten your hands. Put the other one in another dish. You don't have to be, this is not that critical of a step. Just get it into the bowl. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to cover those with plastic, and we're going to let those sit for about an hour until they have probably doubled at least in size. And at that point, they'll be ready to be turned into pizzas. So we'll be back in an hour. Okay, so while we wait, I'm going to go ahead and set my oven to 500 degrees. While it will go to 550 through trial and error for me anyways, I have found 500 is the best. And we use pizza steels, as you can see. If you have a pizza stone, that works as well. But we have found that with the pizza steel, you can have 2 of them in the oven, and you can cook 2 pizzas at a time, and it works out great. And they hold the heat much better than a pizza stone. If I was using a pizza stone, I'd probably take the temperature to 550. But we're going to preheat those pizza steels for at least an hour while we're waiting on the dough to proof out. Okay, so once you let the pizza balls rest for about another hour, you want to take some semolina flour, put some on their counter. Then we're going to take the dough out of the bowl. And this is important. So you just push down in the center. Okay? Keep your edge so that you'll have a crust. But just push down on the center at first. Flip it over. And do the same. Flip it back over. And at this point, you can do any kind of technique. I learned this from Mrs. Triple H, but essentially you just let gravity do the trick here. And I'm just doing some slight pulling letting the dough stretch just a little bit. Okay. And we're going to put it on, I use a pizza screen. And remember, this was the really small dough ball. So it's obviously it's going to make a really small pizza. Now we have some fresh sauce here. You can buy a pizza sauce. These are San Marzano tomatoes that I just crushed, put a little olive oil and oregano. And then what I do is a little Parmesan, Reggiano. A little more oregano. Then we put on mozzarella. Now it's real important not to use fresh mozzarella. Again, the oven temperatures just don't work if you use fresh mozzarella. All that water in fresh mozzarella in a regular oven is just going to make your pizza real soggy. And so we'll put on a little pepperoni. We'll do some bell pepper. Okay, so this pizza just came out of the oven. And again, this was a small pizza because this was a small dough ball, but you can see it's got a beautiful, I don't know if you can see, a beautiful crust. And yeah, we'll let this cool just a minute and we'll cut into it. Okay, so you can see that's a beautiful light, airy crust. Just gorgeous. Probably should have let it cool a little more. So let that cool a little bit and we're going to eat it. But that crust is nice and it's crunchy out there, but it's also very light, as you can see. Alright, so you can see Mrs. Triple H's pizza is much better. Now she's using ham and bell pepper and onion. And we'll see how it comes out when it's done cooking. Usually she does a pretty good job making her pizzas. Alright, just to do a size comparison, that smaller pizza ball yielded a pretty small pizza, as you can see, and here is the a regular size pizza ball, and that's probably about a 12-inch pizza, or maybe a little more. And anyways, just to give you the comparison. So, and the crusts are, you know, it's not a real thick crust. All right, see, this pizza looks done. So you can see that's a lot of pizza. We'll have leftovers and eat on that for a long time. So it's really makes beautiful pizzas, though, that dough does. Just to give you an idea of the texture of the dough.
Well, that's a wrap. Look, I wish two things. I hope you try this recipe, and the other thing is I hope you enjoy making it and eating this pizza at home. If you'll stay tuned, the recipe, ingredients, and process will be posted.